When we talk about something as big as a civilization, we are really talking about a very large group of people who share a way of life over a long time. Western civilization is a term used to describe the cultures that grew out of Europe. It is connected to ideas from ancient Greece and Rome, the Christian religion, and major historical events like the Renaissance, the Reformation, and the Enlightenment. These events shaped its laws, its science, and how its people think about individual freedom and government. For many centuries, Western civilization spread its influence across the world through exploration, trade, and sometimes conquest, becoming a dominant force in global politics and culture. On the other hand, we have Islamic civilization, which is centered around the religion of Islam. This civilization began in the 7th century in the Arabian Peninsula with the teachings of the Prophet Muhammad. It quickly grew into a vast and powerful empire stretching from Spain to India. Islamic civilization made incredible advances in mathematics, medicine, astronomy, and philosophy during a time known as the Islamic Golden Age. Its culture is built on the teachings of the Quran, a strong sense of community among believers, and a rich history of art and architecture. Today it connects over 1 billion people across the globe, from the Middle East to Southeast Asia and beyond. The history of the world is like a long story of how different civilizations interact. Sometimes they trade peacefully, sharing goods and ideas that make both sides richer. At other times, they compete for resources, land, or influence, which can lead to conflict. For the past few hundred years, Western civilization has been in a very strong position, setting many of the rules for how the world works. But history teaches us that nothing stays the same forever. Power and influence can shift from one group to another over time, like a slow-moving tide that changes the shape of the shoreline. Today, many people are asking if we are living through one of these great shifts. They look at the West and see signs of weakness or confusion. They see problems inside its societies that seem hard to fix. At the same time, they see other parts of the world, including the Islamic world, becoming more confident and assertive. This has led to a big conversation about whether Western civilization is in decline. This essay will explore some of the reasons people feel this way. It will look at the challenges the West faces from within and from new technologies, and consider why other influences like Islam appear to be growing stronger. One of the main reasons people worry about the West is because of problems they see inside its own countries. A civilization is only as strong as the societies that make it up. When people lose trust in their governments, their legal systems, or even each other, the entire structure can begin to feel unstable. In many Western nations, there is a growing sense of division. People are separating into political groups that seem unable to talk to each other or find common ground. This makes it very difficult for governments to solve important problems, from fixing roads to managing the economy, because every decision becomes a fight between opposing sides. This loss of trust is not just in politics. It extends to other important institutions that have long been pillars of Western society. For example, trust in the media has fallen significantly. Many people feel that news organizations are no longer neutral reporters of facts, but are instead pushing a specific opinion or political agenda. This confusion makes it hard for citizens to know what is true, which is a serious problem for a democracy that depends on well-informed voters. Similarly, confidence in educational systems and even scientific experts has weakened, creating a society where shared facts are harder to find and agreement becomes nearly impossible. Furthermore, economic challenges add another layer of stress to these societies. For generations, people in the West grew up with the expectation that their children would have a better life than they did. This idea of progress was a core part of the Western dream. However, in recent decades, this has become less certain for many. The gap between the rich and the poor has grown wider, and the cost of living has risen faster than wages for many families. When people feel that the economic system is no longer fair or offering them a path to a better future, it can lead to widespread frustration and anger. These internal problems create a cycle that is difficult to break. Political division prevents effective solutions to economic problems, and economic hardship often makes political divisions even worse. People start to feel that the system is broken and that their leaders are not capable of fixing it. This feeling is sometimes compared to the late Roman Empire, which did not fall simply because of outside invaders. It decayed from within first. Its political systems became corrupt, its economy faltered, and its people lost faith in the Roman way of life. The fear today is that the West might be showing similar signs of internal decay. A civilization is held together not just by its institutions, but also by a shared set of values and beliefs. These are the ideas that give people a sense of purpose and a common identity. For much of its history, Western civilization was built on a foundation of Judeo-Christian values, a belief in reason and science from the Enlightenment, and a strong emphasis on the individual. These values shaped everything from family structures to legal codes. However, in recent times, many of these traditional values have been questioned and, in some cases, rejected, leading to a sense of cultural confusion and disagreement about what the West stands for. One of the most significant changes has been the decline of organized religion, particularly Christianity, in many Western countries. For centuries, the church was a central part of community life, providing moral guidance, social services, and a shared worldview. As fewer people attend church or identify with a specific faith, this common moral framework has weakened. While many people still hold strong personal ethical beliefs, there is less public agreement on what is right and wrong. This can make it difficult for society to address complex moral questions, from family life to medical ethics, because there is no longer a widely accepted authority to turn to for answers. At the same time, new ideas have risen to challenge older ones. Concepts from critical theory and postmodernism, which began in universities, have become more widespread. These ideas encourage people to question traditional power structures, historical narratives, and even the idea of objective truth itself. They argue that many of the West's foundational stories were used to justify inequality and oppression. While these critiques have shed light on real historical injustices, they have also contributed to a loss of confidence in the West's own history and cultural inheritance. Some people feel that this constant self-criticism has left the West without a positive story to tell about itself. This shift in values can be seen in everyday life. Debates over national identity, historical monuments, and free speech have become common and intense. Ideas about gender, family, and community are changing rapidly, and there is often little consensus on the new norms that should replace the old ones. This creates a feeling of instability, as if the cultural ground is constantly moving under people's feet. A civilization that is not sure what it believes in or what it values most can find it hard to stay united and to project a confident vision for the future, both to its own citizens and to the rest of the world. Technology has always been a driver of change in civilizations, but the speed and scale of today's digital revolution are unlike anything seen before. The internet, social media, and artificial intelligence are reshaping our world in profound ways, and while they bring many benefits, they also present serious challenges to the stability of Western societies. One of the biggest challenges is how these new technologies are changing our public conversations. Platforms like X, Facebook, and TikTok have become the main places where people get news and discuss politics, but they operate very differently from the traditional media they have replaced. These platforms are controlled by a small number of very powerful tech companies and individuals. Their main goal is often to keep users engaged for as long as possible, and they do this by using algorithms that show people content that is likely to provoke a strong emotional reaction. This often means that extreme, angry, or sensational posts spread much faster than calm, reasonable ones. This has made our political discussions more polarized and hostile. It also allows wealthy individuals who own these platforms to have enormous influence over public opinion, pushing their own personal agendas in a way that bypasses the checks and balances of traditional journalism. Furthermore, the rise of the internet has eroded the idea of a shared reality. In the past, most people in a country got their news from a few major newspapers or television channels. While these sources had their own biases, they provided a common set of facts that everyone could discuss. Today, people can live in completely separate filter bubbles or echo chambers online. They can choose to only see information that confirms what they already believe, and they may never encounter different perspectives. This makes it easier for misinformation and conspiracy theories to spread, and it deepens the divide between different groups in society. This new technological landscape also presents a challenge to democratic governments. It has become very easy for foreign powers to interfere in Western elections by spreading false information and stirring up social divisions online. At the same time, governments are struggling to figure out how to regulate these powerful tech companies without limiting free speech. The very tools that were once hailed as instruments of freedom and democracy can now be used to undermine it. This creates a situation where Western institutions feel slow and unprepared for the rapid changes being driven by a technology that is both a source of innovation and a potential threat to social cohesion. As some observers see signs of decline in the West, they also see signs of rising confidence and influence in other parts of the world, particularly within the Islamic world. This is not happening because of a single organized plan, but through a combination of factors, including population growth, a strong sense of shared identity, and a renewed commitment to faith. Demographics are, honestly, a powerful force in history. In many Western countries, birth rates are low and populations are aging. In contrast, many Muslim-majority countries have younger, faster-growing populations. This simple fact means that the global share of Muslims is projected to grow significantly in the coming decades. This demographic shift is also visible within Western countries due to immigration. For decades, people from Muslim-majority nations have moved to Europe and North America seeking economic opportunities or fleeing conflict. While many have integrated successfully, they have also brought their faith and cultural values with them, establishing strong communities. This has changed the cultural landscape of many Western cities, introducing new traditions, foods, and perspectives. For some, this is a sign of a healthy, multicultural society. For others, it raises questions about assimilation and the preservation of the host country's traditional culture and identity. Beyond demographics, there is also a sense of strong cultural and religious conviction within many parts of the Islamic world. While the West is experiencing a crisis of faith and values, many Muslims hold a deep and unwavering belief in the principles of Islam. This faith provides a clear moral code, a strong sense of community, the Ummah, and a powerful shared identity that connects believers across national borders. In a world that feels increasingly uncertain and fragmented, this kind of certainty can be very appealing and can provide a solid foundation for building strong societies and projecting influence. This rising confidence is also visible on the geopolitical stage. Oil-rich nations in the Middle East have used their wealth to build futuristic cities, fund universities, and exert significant influence in global finance and politics. Other Muslim-majority countries like Turkey and Indonesia are becoming major regional powers. While the Islamic world is very diverse and often divided by political and sectarian conflicts, there is a growing sense of a shared destiny and a desire to play a larger role in shaping the 21st century. This stands in stark contrast to the self-doubt and internal division that many people see within the West. The idea that civilizations can rise and fall is not new. It is one of the oldest stories in human history. By looking at the past, we can see patterns that may help us understand what is happening today. The Roman Empire is the most famous example in the West. Rome was not conquered overnight. Its decline was a long, slow process that took centuries. It suffered from internal political corruption, economic inequality, overstretched military commitments, and a gradual loss of faith in its traditional values and gods. When new groups like the Germanic tribes began to press on its borders, they found an empire that was already weakened from the inside. Another powerful example comes from China. Chinese history is a cycle of dynasties rising and falling. A new dynasty would often come to power with great energy, unifying the country, building infrastructure, and promoting prosperity. Over time, however, dynasties would often become corrupt and complacent. Rulers would become weak, taxes would become too high, and the government would become unable to respond to disasters like floods or famines. This would lead to peasant rebellions and civil wars, eventually causing the dynasty to collapse. A new leader would then emerge from the chaos, claiming the mandate of heaven and starting the cycle all over again. We can also look at the Islamic Golden Age. From roughly the 8th to the 14th century, the Islamic world was the global center of science, medicine, and philosophy. Cities like Baghdad, Cairo, and Cordoba were brilliant centers of learning, while Europe was in the Dark Ages. However, this civilization also faced decline. Internal political divisions, foreign invasions like those by the Mongols who destroyed Baghdad in 1258, and a growing resistance to scientific inquiry in favor of a more rigid religious orthodoxy, all contributed to the end of this remarkable era. Power and innovation then began to shift towards a reawakening Europe. These historical examples show us that decline is often a complex process driven by a combination of internal and external factors. Internal decay, political, economic, or cultural, is almost always the first step. It weakens the civilization and makes it vulnerable to outside pressures. No civilization has lasted forever in a dominant position. The historical record is a long story of transfers of power and influence. Understanding this helps us place the current challenges facing the West in a broader context. It suggests that we may be witnessing another chapter in this long, ongoing story of civilizational change. When one civilization weakens, it rarely just disappears. Instead, its power, knowledge, and influence are often transferred to a rising one. This process of transfer is one of the most important engines of history. The rising civilization does not simply copy the old one. It absorbs and adapts its most useful elements, blending them with its own culture to create something new and dynamic. We can see this very clearly in the transition from the classical world of Greece and Rome to the later civilizations of Islam and Christian Europe. Both of these new civilizations saw themselves as inheritors of the ancient world's wisdom. When the Roman Empire fell in the West, much of its knowledge could have been lost forever. However, many important Greek and Roman texts on philosophy, science, and medicine were preserved and translated by scholars in the Islamic world. For centuries, cities like Baghdad were the world's leading centers for the study of these ancient works. Islamic scholars did not just save this knowledge, they built upon it, making their own groundbreaking discoveries in fields like algebra, optics, and medicine. This knowledge was then later transferred back to Europe, helping to spark the Renaissance. Similarly, the rise of the West itself was fueled by a massive transfer of ideas and technologies from other parts of the world, especially from China. Chinese inventions like paper, printing, gunpowder, and the compass were all crucial to Europe's development. Paper and printing allowed knowledge to spread much more quickly, fueling the Reformation and the scientific revolution. Gunpowder changed warfare forever, giving European states a military advantage. The compass made long-distance sea exploration possible, leading to the Age of Discovery and the creation of global empires. The West's success was not built in isolation, but on its ability to absorb and improve upon innovations from elsewhere. Today, we might be seeing the beginnings of another great transfer. As Western influence becomes less dominant, other powers, particularly in Asia, are rising. These nations are not simply rejecting Western models. Instead, they are adopting Western science, technology, and economic practices while combining them with their own unique cultural values and political systems. They are learning from the West's successes and its mistakes. This process is creating new and powerful hybrid models of modernity. The future may not belong to a single dominant civilization, but to a world where power and ideas are more widely distributed than ever before. The changes we are seeing in the world today present both serious challenges and new opportunities. For Western civilization, the primary challenge is to address its internal problems. This means finding ways to rebuild trust in democratic institutions, bridge deep political divides, and create economic systems that feel fair and provide opportunity for everyone. It requires having honest conversations about values and identity, finding a way to acknowledge historical failings without falling into a spiral of self-doubt. A civilization that can successfully reform itself from within can renew its strength and vitality for a new era. One of the biggest questions is how to handle the challenges of technology and globalization. It is impossible to turn back the clock on the internet or global interconnectedness. The task, therefore, is to learn how to manage these powerful forces. This could mean developing new regulations for technology companies to make them more transparent and accountable. It might involve new investments in education to help citizens better distinguish between reliable information and misinformation. It also means finding a new balance between the benefits of global trade and the need to protect local jobs and communities. For the rising powers, including those in the Islamic world, the challenge is different. As their influence grows, so do their responsibilities. They must manage their own internal divisions, whether they are political, sectarian, or ethnic. They also have the opportunity to contribute to solving global problems, from climate change to economic instability. The goal would be to avoid the mistakes made by past dominant powers and to help build a more stable and cooperative global order. A world with multiple centers of power could be more balanced, but it could also be more chaotic if these powers cannot find ways to work together. Ultimately, this new era presents an opportunity for everyone to learn from each other. The West can learn from the strong sense of community and faith that gives vitality to other cultures. At the same time, other civilizations can continue to benefit from the West's long tradition of scientific inquiry, individual rights, and democratic governance. The future may not be a contest where one civilization wins and another loses. Instead, it could be a period of greater exchange and synthesis, where the best ideas from different cultures are combined to address the shared challenges facing all of humanity in the 21st century. The question of whether Western civilization is falling is complex, and history offers no simple answers. What is clear is that we are living through a period of profound global change. The West faces significant internal challenges, from political polarization and institutional decay to a crisis of values and the disruptive force of new technologies. These are not trivial problems, and they echo the kinds of internal weaknesses that have preceded the decline of great powers in the past. To ignore these signs would be to ignore the clear lessons that history teaches us about the fragility of even the most powerful civilizations. At the same time, the world is becoming more multipolar. The confident rise of other centers of influence, including a demographically young and culturally assertive Islamic world, is reshaping the global landscape. This is not necessarily a story of conflict, but one of rebalancing. The era of singular Western dominance that has defined the last few centuries appears to be ending, giving way to a new arrangement where power and influence are more widely shared. This is a natural part of the long rhythm of history, which has always been a story of civilizations rising, flourishing, and making way for new actors on the world stage. The most important lesson we can learn from these changes is the importance of adaptability and humility. No single culture has a monopoly on wisdom or a permanent claim to leadership. Civilizations that succeed are those that can look at themselves honestly, address their own weaknesses, and learn from others. The West's greatest strength throughout its history has been its capacity for self-criticism and renewal. Its future will likely depend on whether it can rediscover that capacity today. Likewise, rising powers have the opportunity to learn from the West's successes and failures as they chart their own course. Ultimately, the story of civilization is the story of humanity. We all face shared challenges that transcend cultural or national boundaries, from global pandemics to climate change and the risks of new weaponry. In this interconnected world, the decline of one part of humanity is not a victory for another. It is a loss for all. The most constructive path forward is not one of competition and confrontation, but one of mutual respect, learning, and cooperation. The tides of history will continue to shift, but by understanding them, We can learn to navigate them together and build a more stable and prosperous future for everyone.